A very common question we get is, how the heck do I use BigShort to swing trade? Now, BigShort was originally created for day trading, but as new users came in, we discovered that a lot of the indicators were actually very good for swing trading. So in this video, I'm going to go over 4 different ways you can use BigShort for swing trading. And we're going to go through each one by one with some examples, starting out with number 1, which is Tae Recs. Now, Tae Recs is what I call BigShort's not so secret advantage, because some people literally all they trade is just Tae Recs and sometimes Honey Badger days, and that is it. And they make huge returns every single year, market beating returns, 30%, 50%, 100% plus, just trading Tae Recs. And there are 2 types of Tae Recs. Number 1 is more of an unofficial Tae Rec, where he basically tells you like, hey, here's what I'm thinking, here's what I'm looking at, here's how I'm thinking about the market. Here are some options that you can take for a trade here, but this is not an official rec. An official rec is basically him having very, very high confidence. So far, it has a 100% success rate, which, yes, I know that sounds crazy. That, like, double check, that is what it is. And here are some examples. So number 1, this is an example of an unofficial rec. Could be somewhat official, but basically post-Kospi collapse, he said, hey, looks like Korea is mostly tapped out. You could, number 1, sell out of the money puts on EWY, which if you sold when he told you about it, like let's say you sell an out of the money put right around 140 or something like that, or a put credit spread, that is a very, very nice return. If you want higher risk, you can buy shares or calls of your favorite Momo stock. Also pretty good returns. And then that day when he posted that was actually the literal bottom on Kospi. Nice. Another example is an official rec for QDEL. He wrecked it on this day, but said like you could wait until earnings, so that might be a chance for you to get in. So you could have gotten in right here after earnings. And right here, if we look at the actual return, that was a 36% return in 2 months, which is an annualized return of 533%, which is kind of insane. And then another one, he recommended basically healthcare. He was on vacation, but recommended healthcare and UNH, which pretty much was a massive bottom tick if you bought anywhere around here and held even until here, or held until here, or held until here, right? You're going from about 260, 270 to around 300, 350, or even 400 plus. And finally, he had a rec on IBRX on January 21st, which is right here. And he said, hey, wait for a dip to around $5 if you want to buy. I don't recommend buying right here. So we didn't have a dip quite to $5, as you can see here, but we did get close here and here. And then later on February 18th, so that was about a month, he said, hey, mission accomplished right here. Very nice returns. We went from about $6 to $8. And if you wanted to sell half here and let the runners ride, that's also another big. That's basically a double from going from 6 all the way to 12. So that is one way of swing trading. Literally just use Tae Recs, and that is it. Now, Tae doesn't always have a whole ton of recs. It just depends on what's available in the market and his stance. So then you can move on to these other options, which is basically filtering stocks and finding stocks to trade. Now, we're going to start with filtering stocks because right now, what I'm assuming, if you're a swing trader, you already have your own way of finding stocks. You have your own scanners, right? Maybe you have a Qual McGee scanner, VCP scanner, undercut and reclaim scanner. You have your own bunch of scanners. You have your own watch list. You have your own tickers that you're looking at, which is great. But sometimes you want to either, number 1, filter those tickets for the best opportunities, or number 2, you want to find additional stocks to trade. So let's start with filtering stocks. The first way to do that is to use the BigShort dashboard and to look at the highest positive or negative NOF tickers, and then to look at the top short exempt tickers. That is also what Tae himself does for some of his swing trades. You can see some of the recs had very high short exempt tickers on that list. Now, short exempt lives in this short volume section under short exempt. And if you click on a ticker in the dashboard for short exempt, it will send you here. And I'll just give you one example of a trade that Tae himself took after a user called out very high short exempt in UNH on this day. So short exempt is released in the evening. So we got this big bar after this close. And then the next day, Tae and a couple of other Discord users went long here, and they exited, I believe, on the next day or the day after for a very, very nice gain. I think Tae made like 100,000 or 70,000 or something like that. But generally for short exempt, be careful because you don't want to just, sell puts or sell credit spreads on a stock with very high short exempt. You want to look at other factors as well. But in this case, this is very outsized short exempt. They saw that on this day, the price action was first a little bit bearish, and then we had BigShort indicators show that it was bullish. And that was a very nice short exempt trade. And if you see any of the tickers that you're already watching, if you see them on this short exempt list, that can be a good sign that potentially the ticker is going to have a bounce upwards and you can make some nice money. And number two, looking at NOF specifically on the 1 hour and the 1 day. For example, we had one trader, RB Therapy, call out a double put selling bar on CELH plus a high short exempt. This is what it looked like on the hourly chart. We got these big put bars right here. And as you can see, if you entered after the call out or even in the morning the next day, that is pretty much a 20% gain on commons in 1 day. And if you're trading options, that is probably 150%, maybe even 200, depending on what the actual IV of those options was. And then RB also called out this big call spike and this big put sale. So if you get right to your call spike, we go up. We have a bit of a put sale here. We went a little bit down. And now right here, we have some pretty significant call spikes. So we're going to see if AUR continues going up here. And then RB had a very nice call out on IREN as well. She noticed these double put bars, signaling a potential bullishness, another double put bar signaling potential bullishness, and then another put bar that signaled a shorter term bullishness. Basically what you're looking for NOF on the hourly and the daily is very, very outsized net options flow. Once again, usually bought calls or bought puts are more bullish or bearish than sold calls or sold puts. But if it's a very outsized sold call or sold put, those can also be directional. But when you're doing this, the best way to trade is usually to get confirmation from other big short signals and to use this number for basically once you find stocks to actually use the big short indicators to improve your intraday entries. So if you do see some bearishness at the beginning of the day, you can look for a reversal signal on big short, enter here, and you might be able to ride that for a very nice swing trade. Next up, we have the Tae Crabel orb scanner, which lives in the Tae Crabel section right here. And basically what this is, it's a measure of compression. And if you swing trade, then you know that generally compression can lead to expansion, which is pretty much the whole thing that Tae Crabel looks at. So we have ID, which is an inside day, NR4, which is narrow range 4, which means that the range of that day was the smallest out of the previous 4 days, including that day, NR7, which is narrow range 7, which means that the range of that day was the smallest of the previous 7 days, and then combinations of ID NR4 and ID NR7. Basically, ID plus NR7 is the most powerful one because it just means there's a lot of compression. And then you can use this list here, down here, to see if any of the tickers that you are looking at have that additional compression based on Tae Crabel's criteria. So let's take a look at Apple here, for example. I didn't take a look at this. I have no idea what the chart looks like. So Apple looks like it almost had a breakdown here. Let me actually zoom in because I want to see if we actually broke out of the Tae Crabel range. So for Tae Crabel, if you're trading Tae, basically the way he trades it is you see this green box right here. If you don't have that enabled, click on opening range, right click, and then enable the Tae Crabel range. And the way he trades it is very simple. If it breaks the bottom of the range, he goes short. If it breaks the top of the range, he goes long. And this range is based on a certain calculation over the previous 10 days. You don't have to know what that is. Basically, it's just you look at the open plus the calculation of a stretch, which BigShort automatically does for you. And you can look at the tickers that you have on your list and see if any of them show up on this Crabel indicator, because that additional compression can be a nice signal of a potential breakout or breakdown depending on what direction you are looking for. That is actually filtering stocks that you already have, but you can also use the same approach to find new stocks to trade. So we already went over short exempt. You can use short exempt in the dashboard to find potential stocks with a very high short exempt and look for a potential bounce or reversal. And you can also use these additional things. So once again, dashboard, you can look at NOF during the day to find potential stocks to trade, and also Zeritini and insider trades, which I'm going to go over right now. Now, Zeritini on its own isn't a swing trading indicator. It also lives in the Tae Crabel section called Zeritini in play, because Zeritini is basically an opening range for stocks in play looking at relative volume. But you can and you might be able to use this for potential swing plays. If you have, a good entry at the beginning of the day, you might be able to exit part of that intraday. And then if you want, you can leave a runner overnight to see how it works if other signals and your own personal swing trading setups work with that ticker. So the way Zeritini works is very simple. Basically, what we look at is the first 5-minute bar and the relative volume of that bar versus the 14-day average of that first 5-minute bar. Now, a couple of these here are pretty small caps, so I'm going to ignore them, but let's take a look at one that worked. So Vertex broke down, and you can see the orb time at 9:40, and then Nether actually broke upwards at 9:40 as well. So the way you would trade this is very, very simple. A pure Zeritini setup, let me condense this a little bit. You basically trade, number one, you look at the first candle. If the first candle is downwards, you look at the first 5-minute opening range, so at the bottom of this range, and you were looking to go short, and you completely ignore the top of this candle. You are not looking to go long. You're only looking to go in the direction of that first candle. So here, the first candle was negative. So your entry would be at the bottom of this candle right here, going short. And then Zaratini, in his study, which got a 1637% return, held until the end of day. So that is what that study was based on. But once again, you can also exit intraday based on big short indicators, or you can hold until the end of day, or you can hold, half until end of day and leave some runners for the next day if this stock fits your criteria for a overnight swing trade. Now for this one, Zaratini used a 10% ATR stop. You can also use a stop at basically the high of day or a 10% ATR. And let's just take a look at another example here. Let's take a look at Nezer and see how that worked out. So for Nezer, what you do is you look at the chart, right? You look at the first candle. The first candle is bullish, so we're looking for a opening range breakout, right? This is where that opening range is. So you enter maybe somewhere here, but that's a very weird spike. I don't know how long that lasted. Realistically, you probably enter on this candle here going long. Then you kind of hold. It never hits your stop because 10% ATR is probably like right around here or so. Or if you have a stop at low of day right here. And then it goes up and you exit either here, exit based on big short indicators, your own personal preference, or potentially hold overnight. Now keep in mind, the Zaratini study did not study overnight holdings. So this is a decision you would have to make yourself based on the stock itself and your own approach to swing trading. And finally, insider trades. Generally for insider trades, what you want to look for is buying is generally more bullish than selling because people can sell for a lot of reasons, but buying is usually generally a conviction signal. And usually want to look at number one, big buys and sales compared to their, actual shares and how many shares they have. And you want to look for the ones that are, CEO, the C-suite, basically people who are important. If someone down in the company sells a little bit of stock, that's not really a significant signal. So when you're in this view, you can actually filter by purchases or sales. So I'll filter for purchases. I'm going to filter by value high to low. I'm going to take a look at what actually happened. As you can see, sometimes the date of the trade and the filing is very, very different, in which case we don't always want to look at that. Let's see if there's anything really, really big here value-wise. Now this one here is a pretty big buy. Now this was 713 and it was filed 8/6. So this is a little bit late. And the price is 180. Looks like the price was probably a little bit off, I'm assuming, because the value is at 23 billion. I'm assuming that this is just a data glitch. So let's actually take a look at, well, actually, let's confirm this because sometimes they misenter. The price is 180,000. That does not seem correct. So let's confirm this. Let's see if the price is correct because this is probably just the total amount purchased, I would assume, because this is probably a very small cap stock. Yep, and there's a confirmation. As you can see, this is a very small cap stock. So they just entered the filing incorrectly and put the total amount where they should have put the actual price of the stock. Sometimes this happens, so you have to be careful. But if we go back to insider trades and we go back to filtering by purchases and value high to low, we can see that here price seems reasonable, right? It's not 180,000 per share. A very large quantity. And then about $10 million of value. So we have here a Boston Scientific Corp, director, CEO, president, 9 million buy, 10 million buy. So these would be the ones I would look at, probably this one and this one, because these are the most recent. So let's actually take a look at the actual filing. Acquired quite a large number of shares. And if you actually open up the chart on that day, you will notice a little insider buy pop up if there was an insider trade on that day, which can also be helpful for finding insider trades. So if you are on a ticker and you do see an insider trade, that can be a nice signal depending on what that trade was. And finally, improving intraday entries. Now, I'm not going to go too deep into this because this is just your ability to use big short signals to find a good spot to trade. But once again, if you follow kind of the school of maybe Qual McGee, if you looked at what people like Martin Luke or other really up-and-coming swing traders are doing, people like Sheikh Prisby, other really famous, relatively famous swing traders, you will notice that what a lot of them try to do is they combine their swing trading principles, right? Okay, this stock has tight compression on the daily, looks like it's about to break out. We might have a potential VCP, whatever it is, right? Combined with very, very tight intraday entries, which allows them, right? If your entry is here and your stop is, let's say, all the way over here, then inherently you're going to have to size down lower if you're taking, let's say, 0.5% of account risk per trade. Maybe even if you're taking 1% per account risk per trade, you're going to have to size down, because if your stop is right here, that's a pretty big way to go. But if you use something like BigShort to get tighter entries, you can actually have your stop a little bit closer, right? Whereas if your stop was, let's say, right here, right this distance here, 0.5%, if you had a $100,000 account, you're only risking like $500 here. And then for this here, right, you're still risking $500 because you have a flat risk per position. But because you have a much tighter stop, your risk to reward is a lot higher, and you can have a much larger actual position with the same risk. I believe that's actually how Martin Luke won the swing trading championship. He had a very tight stop, and he had very tight risk, allowing him to get higher R and get a lot more bang for his buck. So these are all examples of how you can use BigShort to swing trade. Obviously, for this last one, you have to actually understand the indicators, which our onboarding video should help you with. But even if you only trade Tae Recs, or you only trade something like SC or NOF, that can still be a very profitable market beating strategy. So there's a lot here for everyone. And if you want to try it out, there's a link to trial below. It's just $37 for 2 weeks. And if you have an account of any sort of size, you should be able to make multiples of that even during your trial. So that's it for this video, and I'll see you in the next one.